how big this thing is.
The site is so remote, the terrain so tricky, it's only accessible by helicopter. As we fly over this narrow part of the Fraser River, the waterfall created by the rock slide is unmistakable.
As you can see, there's the big rapid in the center.
From the air, fisheries manager Dale Mickey shows us the newly formed rapid. He says that section of the cliff is what tumbled into what used to be a calm waterway.
All the rock on the top of that face has fallen into the river, which is confining passage for fish. I've never seen anything to this degree on this size of a river.
The churning water is pushing back against the salmon struggling below.
So typically if salmon have some room to kind of swim down, they can jump deeper. But if it's shallow, it really restricts their ability to do that, so they can't get the strength to jump over those rapids.
Some have made it through, as seen in this video, but the turbulent water makes it impossible to tell how many. Debris pools are now forming below. Those sticks are actually 25-meter logs. The peak of the run will be mid-August, when up to 180,000 sockeye per day will try to migrate through this channel. Several strategies are in the works to clear the bottleneck, but first, the site has to be stabilized. Rock scalers are blasting off precarious chunks of boulders, some the size of buses.
This is the biggest project of this nature that we've worked on, for sure.
These technical crews dangling from the cliff have spent weeks making the site safe for teams that'll be working below.
We hope to be rolling the rocks down at the river level to create the fish passageway.
They're hoping the calmer waters of that man-made fish channel and maybe a fish ladder on top will help the salmon. Another option would be to fly them by helicopter in buckets to be released upstream. But there's concern those options won't be enough to handle the 3.5 million salmon that are coming.
I think it's very critical.
Gord Starrett is working with nearly 24 First Nations that could be directly affected. Many of them also getting a first-hand look, some calling for a state of emergency.
There's First Nations up above the slide that have already started to shut down their fisheries and ensure that every fish makes it back to the spawning grounds.
And there's no time to waste, because right now the fish can't go forward and they won't be going back. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, along the Fraser River in BC.
It's literally threatening my life.
Kimberly Muse isn't talking about the stage 4 cervical cancer she's battling. She's talking about the roadblocks in the way of the one thing she says is saving her life.
It feels like month after month the access to that treatment is getting threatened by these restrictions for non-essential travel.
Muse travels to California every month to take part in a clinical trial. She sent us this video en route.
Made it to Seattle. Yay. There's the Space Needle.
Driving from Vancouver to Seattle, she then catches a flight to Los Angeles. 24 hours later, after her appointment, she returns home to a 14-day mandatory quarantine. It was already taking a toll on her family when suddenly last week, more rules were announced.
And then with the most recent COVID testing, we started looking at the logistics around the COVID tests and what the implications would be and how that could potentially make me miss my flights.
Ottawa previously denied her an exemption as an essential traveler. Now she fears the new requirement to quarantine at a hotel for 3 nights at her own expense will make the burden too much to bear. And she's not alone.
We're getting caught in the middle of a logistical nightmare.
Anna Nayarati is in a similar position, traveling to the U.S. every 3 weeks for colon cancer treatments.
I've got my UV sanitizer.
She took this video while finishing her most recent quarantine at home. As soon as the 2 weeks are up, she heads straight back to the States.
We need to travel. Ours is for an essential service. And there are other Canadians that are in my position where at one point or another the deadlines don't meet and they'll have to miss their medical treatments.
So far, the federal government says there will only be very limited exceptions to the hotel quarantine requirements. Health Canada says more details on the new measures will be provided in the coming days. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver.
So the water came up to here at the highest point.
Shannon Watson walks through what used to be her home. It's been sitting empty, unlivable for more than a year now. Black spots of mold line the walls, an ugly reminder of everything she's lost.
It was my life, right? The smell was so bad, I had a headache instantly.
She's one of dozens of flood victims trying to move on after last year's disaster. The Kettle River spilled into this neighborhood of Grand Forks. Now, about 100 of these homes have to go as part of the city's plans to make the area a floodplain. The city received about a $50 million package, including funding from the federal and provincial governments. It's for flood mitigation and home buyouts, but it's under the condition that the homes are assessed at what they're worth after the floods, which in many cases isn't very much. In Watson's case, her property was valued at $150,000 before the flood hit.
Well, they're only offering me $40,000. That's a $110,000 loss. I don't have another 25 years to do it all over again.
You know, we have to look at our long-term financial security.
The city says the priority is to save Grand Forks from future flooding. The mayor adds they're trying to find other ways to help residents, but he's making no promises.
It is a disaster, and it's not our responsibility to make people whole.
Experts call the situation unprecedented in BC and possibly Canada.
I've never heard of an assessed value being taken after a hazard event.
This disaster recovery expert says climate change is triggering more floods and fires. So while this may be the first such buyout, it likely won't be the last.
We need to start being very clear with communities. Are we going to pay for you if you get flooded, or can we do something now to help you move out of that flood zone, but do it in a way that is fair and equitable?
But that may feel too late for people in a neighborhood that's about to disappear. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Grand Forks, BC. This is the face of Oak Bay's deer problem. The picturesque community nestled on the outskirts of Victoria has been taken over by deer.
They get into my backyard, I'm not sure how, but they find a way.
They've become problematic.
They poo on my lawn, they eat my plants.
We've been in our house for 24 years.
And some residents have had enough.
At first I thought they were adorable, and now they are such a pest.
But the overpopulation is not a new problem. The deer have been around for years, so in 2015 the municipality launched a trial deer cull. It didn't go over well.
There was a lot of, contention around the cull at that time. So there was a proposal made that same year to try an immunocontraception.
Immunocontraception, also known as animal birth control.
I've just been doing a half mil.
Cutting-edge science is now being used in a pilot program to try to prevent the deer from procreating. First, researchers have to figure out exactly how many deer they're dealing with. A control group is identified and those deer are tagged.
Okay, safety's on. There is a dart in the rifle.
The team sets out early in the morning, searching for deer on suburban streets. No subtle task in the middle of a small city.
It just is important that we make sure we do things right, that we aren't taking unnecessary risks or unnecessary challenges.
Now it's time to look for a doe that's tagged to be targeted for the vaccine.
Is there one there that doesn't have a collar?
It doesn't take long to spot one.
Fawn just came running into the forest here.
Next, they lock and load the tranquilizers. And within minutes, their target is brought down, the second one of the day.
Just put her on this side of the tree here.
The doe is carried out into the open, and now it's time to inject the vaccine.
Where did she get darted?
Darted left.
Darted left, so you want to inject it in the left.
The big question, will it work? At this point, researchers are pegging its efficacy at around 70 to 80%, and the hope is to expand this pilot program right across the country.
If it works, it's really going to be a win-win, and so almost uniformly, people are really strongly on board with what we're doing here. Right now, we can't think of any reasons why it wouldn't work somewhere else.
She ready for reversal?
Communities throughout Canada are eagerly awaiting the results, or better yet, lack of results of this groundbreaking study.
That way, that way.
The doe awakens, success for now.
Yeah, atta girl.
And with the first phase now finished,
oh, there's one there.
Researchers are hoping the solution is as obvious.
We'll get that one next time.
As the problem. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Oak Bay, BC.